Saturday View on Midlands 103. With thanks to Lumclean Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. LumCleanEnergy.com. Have your say. Call 0818 300 103. Text or WhatsApp your Saturday View to 083 3010 103.
And a very good morning to you. Ronan Berry here, bringing you Saturday View, and time for you to have your say. 083 3010 103, the text and WhatsApp number. That's with thanks to Offaly's top-selling car brand, Lamb Brothers Toyota on the Arden Road in Tullamore. You can call us on 0818 300 103 either. Nellie will take your call and get your message to me. So coming up over the next hour, over 30% of Ireland's young people have not received a single compliment in the last month. That's according to the mental health group Jigsaw. And they say that receiving compliments can play a huge role in giving somebody, that sense of satisfaction, that motivation to drive forward, to keep going. And that it can be quite a devastating effect of not receiving a compliment. So have you received a compliment over the past month? Can you remember? Did you actually take that compliment? Were you happy to receive it? Or maybe you're in that group of people who sometimes don't get it. But anyway, we'll look at the linkages between not getting a compliment and a person's mental health very, very shortly. So over 30% of young people saying they haven't received a single compliment in the last month. Also, are Midlands men following a trend that seems to be set nationally and facing into a friendship recession? Because the number of men who report having 6 or more close friends has halved since 1990, and the percentage of people who report having no close friends has increased by 5-fold in the same period. We're going to put that question to some men from around the Midlands a bit later on the show and just see, are they noticing that? Do they see it happening? Are they experiencing that? Do they know of people who maybe might be experiencing that? Or if they're not, what are they doing to sort of circumvent and prevent that as well? But if you're in that bracket, if you feel that the number of close friends you have now versus 20 years ago or 30 years ago is different, and it certainly is lesser, please let me know. 083 3010 103. You can let me know in confidence. I'd love to see what the kind of consensus around the Midlands is. Is it a real thing? Are you somebody who notices your other half not socialising as much or not involved in activities that maybe give him an outlet? Please let me know on the text or WhatsApp number, or call us on 0818 300 103. But before all that, Carol Nolan is an independent politician who has been a TD for the Laois Offaly constituency since the 2020 general election, and previously from 2016 to 2020 for the Offaly constituency, and in recent years has used her time in Dáil to raise many issues, including the rapidly growing rate of immigration into the country. In an interview in the United States this week, former Taosieach Leo Varadkar, who resigned a mere 6 months ago, expressed a view that immigration numbers into Ireland have risen too quickly, with the population growing by 2% annually. This is something I'd like to put to Deputy Nolan. Very good morning, Deputy Nolan.
Good morning, Ronan, and good morning to the listeners.
I suppose, Carol, starting point, your response on hearing those comments from Leo Varadkar.
Look, I'm glad that the former Taoiseach has now conceded that there is a huge problem and that we're at unsustainable levels in terms of immigration. I believe that, it would have been better coming from him when he was in office, and it would have been important to show some leadership on the issue and indeed some maturity and try and deal with the problem constructively. I have been raising this matter for the last 2.5 years in the Dáil with very little support, really. And in fact, what I did get was some opposition to constructive comments and to genuine concerns that I brought to the floor as a representative in the Laois Offaly constituency, where many people were conveying their concerns about inwards migration and the unsustainable numbers that we were getting. However, late in the day, as it is coming from the former Taoiseach, I do welcome the fact that there is some sense of reality now, and that some senior politicians are waking up to the facts, and that's good. And I certainly hope that all of us can work constructively and collaboratively in addressing the issues that unsustainable levels of mass migration presents in this state.
And of course, back in January of this year, you made a couple of remarks in question time in the Dáil as well, and you questioned this thing around arrivals, and particularly around the policies and the controls around immigrants coming into the country, illegal immigrants in particular. And on Taosieach Leo Varadkar kind of batted those away, and he described our immigration policies as firm and tough. And Minister of State at the time, Neil Richmond, dismissed the concerns too about people arriving into Ireland without documentation as utter rubbish. And yet, as you say, you feel almost validated now and vindicated in your view on this. Did it come as a surprise to you that the former Taoiseach made that statement in the US?
I mean, we do need to address the problem. We do need senior politicians taking hold of the reins here and trying to address the issues and put robust policies in place. I mean, certainly there has been a denial and there has been failures, catastrophic failures for too long now, where there wasn't robust policies put in place. And it was disappointing at the time when I was raising legitimate concerns that many reasonable people held about the migration and the unsustainable levels, as I say, that were having an impact on housing, health and on our economy in general, that there was no way that we could sustain these numbers. But I do welcome the fact that finally some senior politicians are taking their heads out of the sand. I would hope that it's not because we're facing election. I'd hope that they're genuine in their concerns now, and I would hope that we can do something going forward and put proper policies in place. But certainly, as the former Taoiseach outlined, the 2% increase every year is too high. And indeed, only in August I raised further concerns myself in respect of the CSO figures. And they stated that approximately 150,000 people emigrated to Ireland in the last 12 months leading up to the end of April. And this represents a 17-year high. And, at that time, I again reiterated my concerns. And now we're seeing that there is, I suppose, senior politicians finally waking up to the facts, but hopefully they will put robust measures in place, because it's not enough just saying we have a problem. We do need to put solutions in place quickly.
And he did allude to the fact that immigration has brought many benefits to the country. We're at full employment too, and one only has to listen to the radio, read the papers to realise that the challenges businesses face in getting employees, particularly skilled employees, in as well. But while acknowledging that he also acknowledged that current pace is challenging for Irish society. Now, immigration and housing have been at the top of the agenda for the electorate for the past couple of years, and it kind of generally flips from one month to the other. Are you getting that sense on the ground as well? And what are the challenges or what are the concerns that people have when it comes to immigration in particular?
Absolutely. I mean, look, in terms of immigration, you've more competition for housing, and we just don't have enough houses for people. We need to, I suppose, take measures to make sure that there's affordable housing for people, that there's more housing schemes in place, and that that it's not becoming a bigger crisis. We do have a domestic crisis, so there is huge challenges. And yes, of course, you're right in saying that immigrants do come here, they contribute, they work. We have fantastic people who came from all over the world working in our hospitals, and that goes without saying, and working in all sectors. But we have to just remember too that not everybody is here to work, and you do have exploitation of social welfare systems when the social welfare is too generous, when the benefits are too generous. But I think part of the problem is that we're seen as a soft touch internationally, and the fact that Minister O'Gorman back in 2021 tweeted in 8 different languages at the time, inviting people to come to Ireland and suggesting that they would have their own door accommodation, fueled the whole issue and the whole problem around inward immigration numbers. It gave the wrong impression, it sent the wrong signal, and I believe it was a reckless move at that time. But there's huge challenges, as you say, in terms of housing, and we can't sustain it. We just can't. It's causing division. And, for years and years, we heard politicians in the Dáil calling out direct provision. But you have instances now where you have up to 80 male migrants at times are housed in one building, and they don't seem to express the same concerns anymore, which is alarming, because, you have the same situation really. And I believe that there has to be, a proper a way forward, a plan. There needs to be a cap. And certainly, when I suggested that a number of years ago that we look at the inward immigration and the impact it was having on housing, it was criticised quite strongly. But we shouldn't have arrived at this point. We shouldn't be at a point where everything is starting to break down, our housing and our health system. We need to move forward, and we need to put proper measures in place to ensure that anybody who's coming into Ireland is legal, firstly, has their proper documentation, and also that, that they're not here to exploit a social welfare system, that they're here to contribute and here to work. And we are fortunate in that, as I said previously, we do have great people here from all parts of the world. We have, the best of nurses in our system that may have come from the Philippines and other countries, and they're fantastic. We couldn't be without them. But there is a difference between when we talk about immigration, legal immigration and illegal immigration. There's a big difference. And there's a big difference also in terms of, looking at how people are contributing to our economy and our society. And it's very important that that's happening. It's also important that we provide for fleeing persecution or war. And look, we've had instances of that in the past. I remember myself in the 90s when the Bosnian War erupted, and many Bosnian people came here and they integrated quite well and worked. But the problem is, and the issue and the concern that I've continuously raised, is that we're at an unsustainable level, and that not everybody coming in is a genuine immigrant or genuine.
And that's a point that you brought up in the Dáil again back in January of this year, where you said that 7 in 10 people arriving in Dublin Airport in 2023 had claimed asylum without a passport or identification, despite boarding planes with documentation. Has enough action been taken on that matter, do you think?
Some action has been taken, to be fair and to be honest. I did submit a parliamentary question to Minister McEntee some time ago. It was actually in June, and there were some doorstep operations where there were some checks taking place. I think there was about 3,400 checks that had taken place, I was informed, in terms of airlines and in terms of proper checks taking place on the airlines. But again, look, it's not enough. I mean, we just need more of this. And the problem is that it's coming a little too late. We're way down the track now, and it should have been in place long ago. But having said that, I do welcome the fact that the actions that Minister McEntee informed me of in a response to a parliamentary question include border management units within the Department of Justice and the National Garda Immigration Bureau. And they've conducted something like 3,040 doorstep operations on airplanes up to the end of May of this year as part of a range of new measures to ensure that everything is correct and legitimate. And that's only right. I mean, we all have to abide by those laws if we're travelling to other countries. In response to this question, the Minister did mention that, there would be immigration staff training in terms of the staff being able to identify false documentation and those type of issues. Again, it's positive, but I actually tabled a follow-up question to the Minister in July, where I asked the Minister to provide another update on plans to increase airline and air carrier fines, where the airlines have not upheld their obligations by ensuring passengers have appropriate documentation. And that's a very reasonable thing, and I still await the Minister's response on that. But yes, look, we can look at the little positive things that are happening, but my concern is that it's a little too late, and because we're at that situation now, what needs to happen is a ramping up, and that means more resources. It means more Gardaí in the National Immigration Bureau. It means more people in the Department of Justice. And in terms of the processing of documents for people, it needs to be done a lot sooner than 3 months, because if somebody shouldn't be in the country at all, they certainly shouldn't be waiting for 3 months to be told they're legitimate or not. Another issue of concern that I've raised time and time again is deportation. It's not strong enough. We have situations where a handful of people every year are basically asked to deport themselves, and then you have a system that they can seek legal advice and they can actually overturn deportation. So our laws are not tough enough in terms of deportation, and I've been calling now for some time for those laws to be toughened up. And I think it will take a range of measures to tackle the problem that we have now that is spiralling out of control.
And of course, again, back to that point of how that can have an impact on housing in particular. And, the latest statistics released yesterday from the Department of Housing, again, show an all-time high of 14,429 people who are now classed as being homeless or without accommodation. And that figure does not include refugees, asylum seekers or women in refuge centres or rough sleepers. But it is alluding to that many people, single people, are leaving maybe direct provision setups and then seeking emergency accommodation from the government. But of that number, 152 of those adults are actually in the Midlands counties, 71 in Westmeath, Offaly with 45 and 24 in Laois. So is this an issue? Is this a national issue that really is important to people in County Offaly, or do those figures suggest otherwise?
Absolutely, it's a huge issue. I mean, I see people all of the time, people who are working part-time, people who are working full-time, that find themselves in the situation where they're on the verge of homelessness. Now, I'm dealing with a huge number of cases. Currently, I've been in contact with Threshold on behalf of pensioners who have to leave accommodation. It's an issue that's affecting all age groups. And it's even, as I say, affecting many, many families where both parents are working part-time or full-time, but where, due to their circumstances, they cannot afford increasing rent. And they find themselves in huge difficulty. And as the saying goes, a person can be only a few paychecks away from being homeless. So it's an issue, a very real issue, that is becoming worse. And as I say, because of the lack of accommodation as well, there's pressures in the system. And, we have a situation where there's lots of too much competition now, where a person renting a house can get more by renting to Ukrainian family than another family. For instance, the accommodation recognition payment is worth €800 per month, tax-free. And that's reducing the supply of rental accommodation in Ireland. I believe that's causing division, and it's something that needs to be tackled, because you have to have a fair and level playing field, and we have to look after people. I mean, I've seen people who have contributed to society and who are genuinely doing their best, and they find themselves in that awful situation, whether it be through separation or maybe through an issue with the banks where their house has been repossessed, or an issue where, they fell on hard times. They find themselves in the situation of becoming homeless. And as I say, I'm seeing frightening numbers of people who are on the verge of homelessness throughout Offaly, and it is worrying.
It sounds like you have more work to do as well, and you have declared that you will run in the next general election, which many are predicting could come soon enough. You're definitely firmly putting your name on the ballot paper.
Yes, I'm running as an independent candidate. I'm not anyway associated or aligned to the Independent Ireland Party, which is completely different. And I look forward to defending my seat and taking up the challenge again. I have worked hard for people, and indeed it will be up to the people to decide whether they want to keep me there or not. And I respect whatever decision they make and whatever happens, but I will give it my all. I will continue to work hard, I will continue to ask the questions, and I will continue to serve the people as best I can in this constituency.
Deputy Carol Nolan, thank you so much for that this morning.
Thank you very much, Ronan.
Sorry, Carol there, of course, responding to those recent comments by former Taosieach Leo Varadkar given to a US magazine about the rate of immigration into this country. He also said that he stepped aside for political reasons to allow a new leader into the party in advance of a general election. Nobody's giving away when it's going to happen, but all indications are it could be within the next 6 or 7 to 8 weeks, which would mean you would suspect it could be called as early as next week or the week after. It's almost becoming an inevitability at this stage. Big week next week, so budget, of course, 2025 being unveiled next Tuesday. Maybe we might hear more on a general election just after that. Who knows? Time for me to take a very short break, though. After that, we're going to look at why 30% of Ireland's young people have not received a single compliment in the last month, and the impact it can have on a young person's mental health. And also, we're going to explore, are Irish men in the middle of a friendship recession? A recent report in the paper suggests so, and it has some rather kind of concerning numbers around the number of close friends that men have in 2024 versus what they would have had back in the 1990s. If that's something that's affected you, or you have an opinion on that, 083 30 10 103, or give us a call on 0818 300 103 either. Talk to you in just a couple of moments, but right now across the Midlands it is 9 degrees.
Saturday View on Midlands 103 with thanks to Lumcloon Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. lumcloonenergy.com.
Still to come, our Midlands men experiencing a friendship recession. But before that, Jigsaw is Ireland's leading youth mental health charity, and it delivers mental health services and supports to children and young adults across 14 services around the country. It was really established in 2006 as Headstrong. It's a community of professional supporters and volunteers with a shared belief in Ireland where every young person's mental health is valued and supported. Now, yesterday was the second annual National Compliment Day, and it was an event and a day created by Jigsaw. Justin McDermott is fundraising manager at the group, and Justin joins me now. Justin, I suppose firstly take us through the reason why you created National Compliment Day.
Yeah, good morning, Ronan. Look, great to be here. Yeah, Compliment Day, is, as you said, it's the second year as our big kind of community campaign to raise awareness and funds for Jigsaw. And really the origin of it, or where it came from, actually came from an initiative that some of our youth volunteers did a number of years ago, where they did a project around, sharing positivity among themselves and their peers, and they come up with this idea of giving compliments. And really that kind of, the success of that small project that was run by our youth volunteers, actually in Limerick at the time, really kind of spread. And then we thought that actually there's something in here, because every time that we ran that project, it really resonated with people. So then last year we decided that we would turn it into a national campaign, a day of compassion, a day of using the power of compliments for action, so that no young person feels alone, fearful and forgotten. And it was incredibly successful, Ronan, last year. Really resonated with people, really touched the chord, I think. And from that then we said that we would look to grow, and we are lucky enough that we're partnered with Starbucks, who are our corporate partner on this campaign, and indeed they're a partner with us for a number of years. And they really bought into it as well. And I think with our powers combined, then we have seen it grow year on year, and we're really looking forward to it growing into the future.
And you drew attention to some research that's been conducted on your behalf that showed that over 30% of young people haven't received a compliment in the past month alone, and young men in particular can be affected by this. How can something as simple as giving or receiving a compliment or make a positive impact on a young person's mental health?
Yeah, it's interesting because, we ran that piece of research just to kind of get a sense in advance of the campaign, just to get a sense of where compliments sit, or what's people's perception, young people's perception of compliments. And it kind of really struck us, the numbers of young people who hadn't said that they'd received, a compliment or a positive affirmation in the last month, and particularly young men, Ronan. 50% of the young men we surveyed said that they hadn't received a compliment or any positive affirmation. And, in some ways people might think that's kind of frivolous, but actually I think it speaks to a responsibility we all have to show kindness and compassion, because you never truly know the challenges that anybody, but particularly a young person, might be experiencing in their life, and we know from our work, and we know from what young people tell us that the single most important thing in a young person's life to help their mental health and well-being is an adult, and we all have that role, and that could be a parent, it could be a granny, a granddad, brother or sister, and you can't underestimate how that kind word, that authentic, genuine compliment or compassion shown to a young person in your life could change how they're feeling in that moment, but also could change how they feel about themselves and can change their lives for the better. We've no doubt that that's the case, and certainly that has been the response we've been getting, certainly from a lot of young people who are engaged with the campaign, and a lot of parents to taking the opportunity of National Compliment Day to take stock and to just recognise and say a nice word and compliment the young person in their life, and we've no doubt that it does make a major difference.
I can appreciate some listeners might think, paying a compliment, it's not a major thing to do, it may not have a huge difference, but there's something bigger at play here, something deeper, because your annual report has showed that there's a 7% increase in demand for mental health services, with a growing complexity in the cases. Can you take us through more of what Jigsaw is currently dealing and facing with when it comes to dealing with young people?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've seen increasing demand. I think last year we got the most referrals that we've ever received in the 18 years of our organisational history. And as you rightly said, the types of presentations we're getting, Ronan, are increasingly complex. And I think one other statistic that also comes from our annual report is that we are now providing 50% more appointments to young people than we did 5 years ago. So if we take a step back and go 5 years ago, that was pre-COVID. And I think what has happened is that we've all been through a shared trauma, a journey over the last 4 or 5 years, and that has affected us all greatly. As well as that, we just have to look at the world around us, look at the broader world, and internationally as well, globally. We've got climate crisis, we've got conflict throughout the world, we've got increasing anxiety levels and stress. I mean, our research outside of our annual report, our research that we undertook called the My World Survey back in 2019 has shown that, significant increases in the levels of stress, significant increases in the level of anxiety that young people are experiencing. And that was research done 5 years ago. So we've no doubt, and our experience in our session rooms where we provide our free therapy to young people is, as you mentioned quite rightly, increased complexity, increased presentations of people experiencing extreme anxiety, extreme stress. Interestingly, increasing isolation, the sense of being detached and isolated, sometimes in a world that says it's more connected than ever. We've got increasing numbers of young people presenting with feeling isolated. So it's a very challenging environment for young people out there. We cannot underestimate it. I think, oftentimes what adults tend to do is try to relate or compare their experience to young people now and sometimes not fully appreciate it. But I think if we're doing that, that's the wrong approach. We have to respect and value that the world that young people inhabit now is so significantly different than the ones that we might have. And we have to respect and value their experience and just be there to support them as much as we can.
Yeah, there's that old adage as well that each generation thinks it's going through the toughest time in the history of humanity and civilization. Yeah. And I think it's always bear in mind it can be a very different world. But there's a lot of positivity out there too. And what sort of message would Jigsaw like to give to anybody, especially those young people who might be listening, who could be feeling alone or fearful or maybe even forgotten? And I touched on this at the start of the show, that there's people who possibly still feel forgotten in a post-COVID environment.
Absolutely, and I think there's two audiences really we'd like to speak to on that, Ronan. Firstly is the young people. So absolutely, any young people listening, that you don't need to feel alone, you don't need to feel forgotten or fearful, that there is help and support there. Jigsaw is there, and you can visit us at jigsaw.ie to find out how we can help you in our services or online. But also it's about making sure that you link into the people who are important around you, people you can trust, people who are there in your life. And as I referenced earlier on, the research that we know that stands out, continues to be a standout point here, Ronan, is that 70% of young people who have good, positive mental health say that the reason why they have good, positive mental health is because of that one good adult, that person in their life that they can trust, that they can turn to and they can talk to. And what we would say to young people is think about who your one good adult is. Think about who that person in your life is that you can go. And if you're feeling low, or if you're feeling like you need help, or you're feeling forgotten, do speak to them, do talk, do reach out. But there's also two sides of that coin too, Ronan, which is a really important message that we continually try to say, that it's not always about the young person. So again, for any parents, for any adults, for any coaches, any teachers, any colleagues indeed that are listening, that that we also have a role to play here, that we have a role to listen, and we have a role to help and support our young people navigate this very difficult world that we inhabit. And that's about being open, being compassionate, and listening. And listening is a skill. It's a skill that is not something that comes naturally, because I'm a parent. I imagine many parents would find listening and non-judgmental listening be a challenge, but it's really important. It's really important. And the key message for young people, absolutely, as I said, is that if you feel alone, fearful or forgotten, please do reach out to somebody that you trust and who's there to listen and help and support you. Access Jigsaw, jigsaw.ie for more information on how we can help and support you if you need our help. But likewise for adults, Ronan, that they too have a role, that listening role. And what we would also say too is there are parents out there listening today who are, worried about a young person in their life, we're here to help and support you too. So absolutely get in touch at jigsaw.ie.
Justin McDermott, fundraising manager with Jigsaw. Thank you so much for that this morning as well. And undoubtedly, I suppose the fact that sometimes Irish people find it hard to pay a compliment or take a compliment, and maybe it just gives us a realisation that that small compliment can make a marked difference in somebody's life, and that to let them know that there are supports out there. Thanks, Justin.
Thanks, Ronan. Appreciate it.
And we will continue sort of slightly on that theme of around mental health. Justin just mentioned it there, that link to people around you, that problem shared is a problem halved, and all those old sayings that we use. Are we actually doing that, though, in the modern day? Because, as I said to you at the top of the show, research is showing that Irish men have far fewer friends now than they did 30 years ago. We'll explore that after this quick break.
Saturday View on Midlands 103 with thanks to Lumcloon Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. lumcloonenergy.com.
In an article in the Irish Times this week, Ray McDermott alluded to fact and called it All the Lonely Men, How to Survive the Friendship Recession. And she claimed that men are facing a crisis of loneliness. And in particular, she said that since the 1990s, that the percentage of men with 6 or more close friends has halved, and the number of men reporting having no close friends has increased 5-fold. So quite an alarming statistic, and not just going back to COVID, they're going right back as far as the 1990s. She speaks about the need for men to develop and maintain meaningful friendships, that is critical for men's mental health and physical health as well. And research shows that making and keeping friendships can reduce male suicide rates and improve overall health as well. She also says that boys tend to lose close friendships during adolescence, a time when they need that support most. And we've just been talking to Justin McDermott there from Jigsaw, and he's talking about the need for young boys in particular to get those compliments at that young age. But let's throw this out to some men around the Midlands. I mentioned earlier how Niall Horan has recently received or gone over 1 billion streams on Spotify. Well, Ray Carolan of Lakeland Kayaks and has recently completed his second round of The Rising, is a man who's probably been on 1 billion streams around Ireland at this stage. Good morning, Ray.
Hi, Ronan. How are things?
Fantastic, Ray. You're somebody who, mental health is a huge thing. You like to raise awareness of it too, particularly with things like The Rising as well. But on that article that Ray McDermott wrote, do you see that as being a thing? Do men have less friends now than we would have done 20, 30 years ago?
Yes, I do. I think they do. I think there's a number of reasons for that, and I think like the likes of. But first of all, it's great that you're covering this because it makes people more comfortable talking with these things, and I think there's such a widespread societal expectations these days because we have such visibility on social media, and I think traditionally gender roles often dictate that men should be strong, independent, and not show that vulnerability or weakness, and this can make it difficult for men to express their feelings and seek the support and make those deep connections, which can lead to loneliness. And I think it's amplified with social media. We've all these followers, we've all these kind of, I suppose, they're more shallow kind of friendships in a way. They're not in person. And I think as a race, first and foremost for me, we seek connection and meaningful relationships, like introvert or extrovert. Like we need connection. And I feel that we can be led to believe that achieving probably honour grades and getting the dream job and the big salary is to be overvalued, more so than actually sustaining proper long-term deep connections and community. So for me, connection, community and family is what keeps us all in check. And I think we probably, this is not to devalue the importance of grades and the importance of getting your dream job and stuff, but I do think we need to have more of a balance there and realise that some of the most important things to be educating people about is those nurturing those relationships and keeping that connection. And I think like if we were to begin to kind of value our relationships with our mother or brothers or sisters, friends, as an accomplishment just as much as maybe your grades or your dream job, then we can begin to put an emphasis on value on this from a younger age. And I feel if you spend your life chasing goals blindly and salaries and career heights, we can kind of neglect that connection, Ronan, and community and relationships, then you will likely end up lonely and lost in those situations. And in this modern, fast-paced, always switched-on world, this is what a lot of men and women, and of course in this case men, do.
And undoubtedly creating time to work on those relationships. And even I think people have probably slipped into a thing where they get a random message from somebody about maybe meeting up, and it's almost like, oh, this wasn't part of my schedule. Because when it comes to scheduling in that physical activity, you're somebody who can certainly speak to that. Oisin Mulligan is a fitness trainer under Mulligan's Fitness from Geeshel in County Offaly. And Oisin, you're probably always pushing people to schedule time in their week for a bit of, just a bit of TLC and a bit of personal fitness and watching their food as well. Does mental health come into that, do you think, in people's? And do you see this friendship recession growing for men?
Yeah, and I think like for me, that's kind of happened to me in the past. So when I just finished up college, I moved away and I came back, and all my friends were kind of gone, and I hadn't any of those meaningful friendships, and I kind of really struggled with my mental health at that time. But I think thinking back to a few things that impacted it that I suppose isn't talked about enough either is sometimes we have friends that we just drink with and not actual friends. So the people that we just drink with, not friends. And I think that's a huge thing in Irish culture. Like going through college, growing up and stuff like that, it's always like, oh, we'll go for a night out, X, Y, Z. You're not creating meaningful friendships through that. I think it's through sport and through activities and through things that we do and meeting up people. That's where the true friends are made. And like, to be honest, I don't know how many people can list 2 or 3 or 4 of those that they have created, because the majority of friendships are revolved around alcohol in Ireland, especially through college and as you go out with that. So that's one thing. And I think like social media, of course, has kind of taken over regards to you can just message people virtually and there's no meeting people in person. And I found that even personal training, like the majority of my business is now online in comparison to where it was in person. And that can be quite draining. But I think one really good thing that's starting to come back is the golfing, run clubs, people making up activities, and like your local boxing clubs and jiu-jitsu clubs and all these sorts of things really, really help with creating those meaningful friendships away from just alcohol and stuff. And I think like the previous person there made the absolute perfect point is people are just chasing, making money, getting to the next promotion, X, Y, Z. But I don't think that's necessarily their fault with the cost of living crisis and stuff going on. It's literally all you hear about in the news 24/7. It's all I hear about as a young person all of the time. So what's my focus going to be on? Trying to combat that, trying to survive through that, trying to make enough money to make way. Not my friends, not my friendship. When actually, that's actually the thing that matters most. Because
do you think perhaps though that are people maybe reluctant then to meet their friends because maybe they're not measuring up to what they think their friends expected of them because of possibly what they see on social media, or because of that general perception out there that you've both alluded to, that we have to be this perfect, all high performing version of ourselves?
Yeah, I think a lot, especially within young people. Yeah, I think that can definitely have a huge impact.
Ray, just suppose you've been listening to Oisin talking there as well, you know, the role of social media. I suppose the same question I put to Oisin, are we maybe afraid to talk to our male friends now because maybe we feel we don't measure up?
Yeah, I certainly think, like, you know, if you know yourself, if you're having a bad day and things aren't going well, work isn't going well, relationship isn't going well, and you scroll through even your friends' social media page, it probably puts their best face forward, their best foot forward. So you may be in that situation where, you know, Johnny's having a great life there at the minute. She's not going to want to be burdened with my problems, you know. And it kind of puts that kind of, whereas before you might be meeting them in person and you just maybe you have the chat, whereas now you're kind of going with this preconceived perception that Johnny's having a better life than you. And I do think, just like for young men as well, I do think there can be a lot of conflict and confusion, I think, with young men today as well, though, because on one hand, we are being encouraged, and rightly so, to be kind of more open and more soft and more laid back. And then on the other hand, with the likes of YouTube and social media, we have the likes of the Andrew Tate and the Jordan Petersons of the world, who have massive followerships, and a massive percentage of them are men, of course, but they're encouraging, obviously, very strong masculinity, action taking, goal setting, and a kind of a win-at-all-cost narrative. And I feel a lot of men are then falling between those two stools of being more kind of in touch with the feminine side, more emotional, but also feeling the pressures of having to drive on. And I think, you know yourself, when you fall between two stools, it kind of generates indecisiveness, inaction, unhappiness, and that can ultimately lead to loneliness. And it's a very sensitive, complex subject, obviously, and like men obviously are men and they'll have certain feelings, testosterone, and that needs to be naturally played out. And I think sometimes those strong masculine traits can kind of get tarred with that kind of broad stroke brush of toxic masculinity. And I think there's a role there in society to be very careful about differentiating strong, honest masculine traits with that toxic masculinity tag. And like that, what Oisin said, I think if men can't be themselves and form those and can't be true to who they are because of maybe the fear of being too masculine, that leads to lack of communication. That breaks the deep connection that they have. And where do we see that over and over again then? We have a pint and we can open up, and you have these weekend friends, and you come Monday again, you're lonely again. So I think there's a huge amount of stuff that you could unpack there, absolutely.
And I will say, in fairness to Oisin, if you follow him on Instagram as well, he's one of the first and foremost to say, look, if you want to go and have that pint, have it. Even if you're on a if you're on a calorie counting diet or you're doing whatever, have that pint, have that treat as well. Damien Mitchell is on with us now. Damien from Tullamore Cycle Centre. Damien, would you concur with what the guys are saying as well, that maybe there is a kind of a loss of connectivity between men and developing those real friendships?
Hi Ronan, how are you doing? I would echo those sentiments as well. And also I think busy work life has a lot to do with it as well. And for me personally, I was never a pub goer per se, do you know what I mean? And the last close friendship I thought I had would have been about 20 years ago, long before I was in a long-term relationship and then marrying and then having a baby. For me, I suppose I'd have a lot of friends through the cycling club, through the drama group. Do I have any real close friends now? Probably not, because I suppose of, busy being with the cycling, busy being with the drama, and also, married life does take up a lot of time and work life takes up a lot of time. And I suppose that by the end of your day, really, if you had planned on meeting your old close friends, things kind of, work life gets in the way, really. And it is a shame actually when you lose touch, but that's life.
Do we just not allow ourselves downtime then? Do we not just say, right, F it, I'm dropping this and I'm going to have a cup of coffee or I'm going meeting that person?
Yeah, I suppose, my other close friend would probably be in the same position, so trying to organise that downtime at the same time probably is a big step. And then as time goes on, are you really so close then, Yeah.
But those men were notorious and kind of famous for, you could meet somebody that they hadn't seen in about 10 years and instantly strike that conversation and go back to the good old days. It is possible. Yeah, but I've often met close friends from years ago on the street, and it's great to see them. Yeah, how are you doing? And all of a sudden, then you've got nothing to talk about. Suddenly you've got nothing in common. They have moved on. You've moved on. Yeah. And I suppose then the importance of those kind of other activities, and you say you're involved in a number of clubs, and particularly in cycling as well, so at least you've got some outlet as well. Oisin, the importance of maybe pushing yourself and getting outside maybe your comfort zone and doing something maybe that you haven't done before in order to meet new people, something you'd advocate for.
Yeah, 100%. And not only just for making friendships, but for overall life, I feel like, especially as lads, when we're pushing ourselves to that uncomfort, we almost remove those feelings of anxiety and depression and stuff like that, which would be associated with, obviously, the lack of friendships, because we're challenging ourselves and pushing ourselves. And I think at a certain age or a certain time, we kind of stop doing that. We just fall into the simple routine of getting up, going to work, doing X, Y, Z. But I think we're always so good at maybe being crap at something for once and starting and going and building it up and then going again. I think it's a huge thing that's kind of misrepresented or not noticed as well. And just on the back of one of the points that one of the lads made there, regards to talking to people and talking to friends and feeling like that you can't speak to people. Actually, I think one thing, and I've came to know this over the last year from speaking at mental health events and different things, a lot of us lads kind of go into a conversation thinking that somebody has to solve the problem for us. And then that's what puts the burden on others. I think if you approach the conversation with literally having a conversation with somebody and being like, I don't want you to solve my problem, I'm just going to talk about it. Because I think that's where the burden gets put on the other person as well. Because as Irish people, we love helping others. We love trying to help people
Absolutely.
out. And
it's
so
an
that sometimes
thing,
can be the burden.
Yeah,
so that can be the burden. So instead, figuring out like, you don't have to fix this, and I don't have to fix this problem that someone's coming to me with. I just have to be there to listen, because all of us know the second that we speak it out, it's solved. We've nearly solved it ourselves, and we solve it with more people that we speak to.
Fantastic point. We're going to have to leave it at that, but just say it out. Don't be looking for solutions. Don't be looking to solve it. Have that conversation. Oisin Mulligan, Damien Mitchell and Ray Carolan, thank you so much for your input this morning. And as Ray said, an important subject and one we need to throw a light on. Maybe as men, we don't talk about the fact that men maybe don't have as many friends. If you do, count yourself lucky. If you don't, reach out to people, reach out to somebody, get in touch, get talking. Thanks for listening. Lorraine McCormick is here next. I'll talk to you all soon.
Saturday View, with thanks to Lumcloon Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. lumcloonenergy.com. Midlands 103.